After years of working with relationship patterns, there is one question I hear again and again, perhaps more than almost anything else. People ask why an avoidant pulls away. They ask what the silence means, why the connection suddenly changed, or how they can recover after experiencing that kind of emotional distance. Those questions are important, and they deserve honest answers. But beneath all of them, there is another question people often carry quietly because they are almost afraid of the answer. Did the avoidant actually become attached to me? Was the connection real on a deeper emotional level? Did they genuinely bond with me, or did I simply experience the relationship as deeper than it really was? Was there something meaningful happening inside them, or was it always something they could eventually leave behind without much difficulty? That uncertainty can hurt even more than the breakup itself.
Because when someone has been involved with an avoidant, they often remember moments that felt incredibly significant. There may have been unusual closeness, private conversations, emotional openness, or moments when the connection felt almost impossible to explain. While those moments were happening, they felt real. They felt important. Sometimes they felt like some of the deepest experiences the person had ever shared with another human being. Then something changes. The avoidant begins creating distance. Communication becomes inconsistent. Emotional availability disappears. Silence takes the place of connection. And suddenly, the behavior seems to tell an entirely different story. It can make you wonder whether everything you experienced was exaggerated in your own mind.
You are left holding two conflicting realities. One reality says, I know what I felt. I know how meaningful those moments were. The other says, if they truly cared that deeply, why could they walk away like this? That contradiction is what keeps people emotionally trapped. Today, I want to examine that contradiction without giving you empty reassurance. Reassurance feels good for a moment, but if it is not grounded in something observable, it eventually stops being enough. What matters is understanding the actual psychological signs that can indicate an avoidant has formed a genuine bond. And this is where many people make a mistake. They look for attachment using the same signs they would expect from someone who is securely attached. They expect obvious affection, consistent communication, emotional declarations, and an increasing desire for closeness. But avoidant attachment often reveals itself through a completely different language. If you are looking for the wrong signals, you can witness evidence of deep attachment repeatedly and still believe there was nothing there. Before we look at what an avoidant may say after they have already become emotionally attached, you need to understand what bonding actually represents for someone with strong avoidant defenses. For a securely attached person, emotional closeness can develop gradually. Connection deepens, trust increases, vulnerability becomes more comfortable, and intimacy generally feels like something positive. For an avoidant, genuine emotional attachment can activate an entirely different internal experience. Their emotional defenses were not created randomly. Somewhere along the way, their psychological system learned that depending on another person, needing someone, or becoming deeply vulnerable could lead to pain, rejection, disappointment, or a loss of independence. So they developed distance as protection. Those walls may have existed for years. That is why genuine bonding can feel so threatening.
When someone manages to get beyond those defenses and becomes emotionally important to them, the experience may not feel peaceful or romantic. It can feel destabilizing. It can feel as though someone has entered a private part of their emotional world that was never supposed to be accessible. Suddenly, another person begins to matter. Their presence affects them. Their absence affects them. Their opinion matters. Their rejection becomes frightening. Their emotional state starts influencing their own.
In other words, the person has become psychologically significant.
And once that happens, the signs of bonding often become subtle. Instead of dramatic declarations, you may notice indirect admissions, unusual vulnerability, strange contradictions, or behaviors that only make sense when you understand what is happening underneath the surface. The first thing an avoidant may say after becoming genuinely attached is often something that sounds almost insignificant. It may sound like, "I'm not very good at relationships. I've always been better on my own. I don't really know how to do this. I'm probably going to mess this up." At first, these statements can sound like warnings. You might even assume they are simply preparing you for disappointment. But sometimes they represent something much deeper. When an avoidant voluntarily reveals their emotional limitations without being pushed, they are exposing a vulnerable part of themselves. They are admitting something they normally protect. Yet they are doing it indirectly because complete emotional exposure may feel unsafe. They tell you the truth, but they leave themselves an escape route. That distinction matters. And the most important clue is often what happens immediately afterward. Pay attention to the silence. There may be a brief pause where they seem unusually attentive to your reaction. They may not ask directly, "Are you still okay with me?" But internally, they may be watching closely to see what happens after they reveal something vulnerable. Did you judge them? Did you reject them? Did you become demanding? Did you suddenly try to analyze or repair them? Or did you simply receive what they said? If you respond with warmth instead of pressure, something important can happen internally. Their nervous system receives new information. They discover that vulnerability did not automatically lead to rejection. It did not result in someone trying to control them. They were not swallowed by another person's expectations. They showed something real, and they survived the experience. That can become a powerful corrective emotional experience. They begin learning, perhaps for the first time, that there may be a person with whom they can reveal a little more of themselves without immediately losing their sense of safety. And that experience can quietly deepen the bond. The second sign is something I call the precision memory. It is one of the most revealing forms of avoidant attachment because it often appears in ways that seem completely ordinary until you understand what it means. It can happen in a surprisingly simple way. You mention something during an ordinary conversation. Maybe it happened weeks ago or even months ago. At the time, it felt like a passing comment. Nothing about the moment suggested that it would stay with them. Then, much later, they bring it up. Not vaguely, not as something they barely remember. They recall the exact detail, the meaning behind what you said, or even the circumstances surrounding it. And sometimes you are the one who has forgotten the conversation, while they remember it almost perfectly. That matters, because they were not simply listening when you said it. Somewhere in the privacy of their own mind, they kept it. They thought about it. They may have revisited it without ever telling you that they were doing so. This is one of the most overlooked signs of genuine bonding with an avoidant, because it does not happen equally with everyone. Avoidant people can become very good at controlling how much of themselves they invest in relationships. They can participate, communicate, spend time with someone, and still maintain an emotional distance that allows them to feel protected. But when someone becomes psychologically significant, that control can begin to change. Their mind starts retaining things almost automatically. They remember your preferences. They remember a story from your childhood. They remember something you were worried about. They remember a small opinion you expressed that you probably assumed had disappeared from their memory. That involuntary attention is important. When someone remembers a detail you barely remember mentioning, it can indicate that your inner world has become meaningful to them. Even if their behavior outwardly looks distant, there may be a completely different process happening internally. They remember because something about you has taken up psychological space.
And sometimes that is what makes avoidant bonding so confusing. Their external behavior can suggest distance while their internal world continues carrying the relationship. The third sign is even more subtle because it often looks so ordinary that people completely overlook it. It is what I call the future reference. This happens when an avoidant casually places you somewhere in their future without being asked to do so.
Maybe they say they want to take you somewhere one day. Maybe they mention a movie they want to watch with you later. Maybe they say, "You would love this place," while talking about somewhere they plan to visit. Or they casually describe an experience that includes you, even though there was absolutely no need to put you into that future scenario. For someone who is securely attached, this may seem completely normal. When people enjoy being connected, they naturally imagine future experiences together. They make plans, picture upcoming moments, and allow another person to become part of the mental picture of what comes next. But with a strongly avoidant person, spontaneous future inclusion can carry much more psychological weight. Why? Because avoidant defenses are built around maintaining independence. Their imagined future often revolves around themselves. Their plans are structured around personal freedom, personal goals, and not becoming psychologically dependent on another person. The defenses do not only protect the present, they can also protect the future. So when an avoidant naturally begins placing you inside their future, something is already shifted. You are no longer existing only in the current moment. Their mind has begun making room for you beyond the present. They may never directly say, "I see you as part of my long-term life." Instead, they may reveal it through small, seemingly meaningless statements. But those statements can tell you that, somewhere inside, you have already crossed a boundary. You have entered a part of their psychological world that they normally keep separate from other people.
The fourth sign may be even more revealing, and ironically, it is often mistaken for something insignificant. I call it the territorial disclosure. This is the moment when an avoidant gives you access to something from their inner world that they normally keep completely private. It does not have to be a dramatic confession. It might be an old fear, a painful childhood memory, an insecurity they rarely acknowledge, a strange personal belief, a sensitivity they usually hide, or even a very specific way they interpret the world that they have never really explained to anyone. The important part is not necessarily how dramatic the information is. The important part is that it was private. They have allowed you to see something that normally stays behind the wall. And notice how they may deliver it.
They might reveal something deeply personal and then immediately laugh it off. They may change the subject. They might say, "I don't know why I'm telling you this," or they may minimize what they just shared. That is not necessarily because the information was unimportant. Sometimes minimizing the disclosure is how they protect themselves after becoming vulnerable. They have shown you something real, but they still want an emotional escape route in case your response makes them feel exposed. To understand the importance of this moment, you have to understand what it costs them. The cost is not simply having a serious conversation. The cost is allowing a section of their emotional defenses to come down. A particular part of their internal world that they have protected for years has suddenly become accessible to you. And if your presence made them feel safe enough to take that risk, that tells you something significant. It means their nervous system experienced you differently from the way it experiences most people. The fifth sign is probably the hardest one to understand, especially if you have personally experienced it. And I want to approach this carefully because I know how painful this particular behavior can feel. Sometimes the sign of deep attachment is not the approach. It is the retreat. But not every withdrawal means the same thing. There is a major difference between ordinary avoidant distancing and the intense withdrawal that can happen when emotional attachment becomes overwhelming. An avoidant who has not become deeply attached may simply maintain a comfortable amount of space. They may be somewhat distant, inconsistent, or emotionally reserved, but there is no intense internal conflict. When the bond becomes significant, however, something different can happen. Their nervous system can become activated. The closeness starts feeling too powerful. The emotional dependence feels dangerous. The possibility of losing you becomes frightening, while needing you feels equally frightening. And suddenly, they pull away with urgency. But there is an important clue in the way they do it. The withdrawal becomes specifically about you. They may say things like, "You make me feel too much. I don't know what happens to me when I'm with you. I can't handle how intense this feels. This is different with you." Notice the difference. They are not simply saying, "I don't want a relationship." They are identifying something specific about the connection between you. That specificity matters. Someone who has not formed a meaningful attachment does not necessarily need to explain their withdrawal through the unique qualities of one particular person. But someone who is deeply affected may need to explain why this particular relationship feels so threatening. And sometimes the answer is painfully simple. It is you. Not because you did something wrong, not because you were too much, but because your presence has reached a level of emotional importance that their defenses were never designed to comfortably manage. That kind of push-away is not proof that the relationship was healthy, nor is it proof that every avoidant who withdraws is secretly deeply in love. Context matters. But when withdrawal is accompanied by intense emotional language, specific references to you, visible internal conflict, and other signs of genuine vulnerability, it can reveal something very different from ordinary emotional detachment. It can show that the connection has become psychologically significant enough to activate the very defenses that were built to prevent that level of attachment. The sixth signal I want to talk about is different from all the others because it does not necessarily appear in what they say. It appears in what they do when they believe you are no longer watching. The sixth sign is different from the others because it is not primarily found in what the avoidant tells you. You see it through what they actually do. And there is usually a particular way they talk about those actions that makes the signal even more revealing. It is protection that you never asked for. When an avoidant has formed a genuine emotional bond with you, their behavior can begin to change in quiet ways. They may start paying attention to your well-being almost instinctively. They notice practical things about your life. They remember what makes your day easier. They might solve a small problem for you, check that something important is taken care of, or quietly make an effort to protect you from unnecessary stress. None of these actions necessarily look romantic. That is exactly why they can be so easy to miss. They require a level of attention that usually comes from genuine investment. You have to know someone fairly well to recognize what they need before they ask for it. But there is another part of this behavior that is especially interesting with avoidant people. They often minimize it. They may go out of their way to do something thoughtful and then immediately act as though it meant nothing. It was nothing. Anyone would have done that. It wasn't a big deal. I just happened to be there. They almost seem determined to make sure you do not attach emotional meaning to the action. Pay attention to that contrast. The behavior may communicate extraordinary attentiveness, while the words attempt to make the behavior look completely ordinary. And sometimes that contradiction is the clue. Someone who feels nothing does not necessarily need to hide the significance of their care, because from their perspective, there is no deeper significance there. But an avoidant who has become attached may feel the need to give you the care while simultaneously protecting themselves from what that care reveals. They can show you through action that you matter, while verbally insisting that you should not read too much into it. So look beyond the explanation. Look at the behavior. The action may be more honest than the words surrounding it. Now, there is something important I need to say before you take these signs and apply them to your own situation. I have described several indicators of genuine avoidant bonding: the details they remember, the future scenarios where they naturally include you, the private parts of themselves they reveal, the intense withdrawal that specifically revolves around you, and the quiet ways they protect your well-being. But there is a danger in learning these signs, and I want to address it directly. You might take this information and turn it into a reason to keep waiting. You might start replaying every memory, every sentence, every small gesture, trying to prove to yourself that the bond was real, because knowing that it was real gives you a reason to keep hoping. I understand why that happens. When you have lived with uncertainty for months or even years, certainty can feel like something you desperately need. You have wondered whether the connection mattered to them. You have questioned whether you misunderstood the closeness. You have wondered whether the moments that felt profound to you were equally meaningful to them. So when someone finally gives you a framework for understanding those moments, it can feel like finally receiving water after being emotionally dehydrated for a long time. But I want you to separate two things. Knowing that a bond existed is not the same as knowing that a relationship can work. Those are completely different questions. The signs we have discussed may tell you that what happened between you was meaningful. They may confirm that you were not imagining the emotional depth, that the connection reached places in them that they normally keep protected. But none of that guarantees that they can give you the relationship you need. Attachment and relationship capacity are not identical. Someone can care about you deeply and still be incapable of consistently showing up. Someone can love you and still be emotionally unavailable. Someone can feel a powerful connection and still lack the emotional regulation, self-awareness, communication skills, or healing necessary to sustain that connection in everyday life. That is one of the hardest truths to accept. The bond can be real. The feelings can be real, and the inability to consistently act on those feelings can also be real. All three can exist at the same time. You do not have to erase one truth to accept another. So if you discover that the avoidant really did bond with you, do not turn that realization into a new reason to abandon yourself. Their attachment does not create a responsibility for you to wait indefinitely. It does not mean you have to remain available while they figure themselves out. It does not mean you should continue accepting inconsistency simply because you know there are feelings underneath it. And it certainly does not mean you owe someone unlimited access to you because they once felt deeply connected to you. What this knowledge can actually give you is something much more valuable. It can free you from doubting yourself. Maybe you have spent a long time asking whether you were foolish for believing the connection was meaningful. Maybe you have wondered whether you were simply projecting your own feelings onto someone who never truly cared. Maybe you have even started questioning your ability to recognize emotional depth in another person. You do not have to carry that story anymore. If the evidence was there, your perception was not automatically wrong. The connection you felt was not necessarily something you invented. The meaningful moments were meaningful. The vulnerability was meaningful. The attention was meaningful. The bond may have been real, even if the relationship could not survive the limitations surrounding it. That distinction matters enormously, because the most damaging conclusion you could take from an avoidant relationship is that your ability to love deeply was the problem.
It wasn't. Your capacity to notice connection, to become emotionally present, to recognize depth, and to care deeply about another person is not something you need to be ashamed of. Do not teach yourself to distrust your own emotional perception simply because someone else lacked the capacity to respond consistently to what was happening between you. You can acknowledge that the connection was real without making that connection your reason to stay stuck. You can accept that they cared without waiting for them. You can recognize that they bonded without believing that you are responsible for healing their defenses. And you can honor what existed without allowing the past to determine what you accept in the future.
Perhaps they will eventually confront what they felt. Perhaps they will one day understand how significant the connection became for them. Perhaps they will carry those memories quietly for years without ever knowing how to express what they meant. But none of that has to determine your next chapter. What matters is that you no longer have to rewrite your own experience simply because the other person could not stay present inside theirs. The details they remembered, the things they revealed, the future moments they imagined, the ways they protected you, and even the intensity of their withdrawal may have all been pieces of the same story. You were not necessarily imagining the depth. You were experiencing something that had become psychologically real for both of you. And perhaps the most freeing realization is this: you can be right about the bond and still choose to walk away. You can know that they cared and still choose yourself. You can believe that what you shared mattered and still refuse to settle for less than the consistency, presence, and emotional safety you deserve. The goal is not to prove that the avoidant loved you enough. The goal is to stop using their limitations as evidence against your own ability to recognize something real. Your heart was not foolish for responding to depth. Your capacity to bond deeply was not a weakness. And whatever they ultimately choose to do with the feelings they carried, you do not have to spend your life waiting for them to become capable of expressing what you already sensed. You can honor what was real without remaining trapped inside it. And sometimes that is where healing finally begins.